Your liver does not get dirty. It is the thing that does the cleaning. So when somebody sells you a 3-day juice cleanse to flush the toxins, what they're really selling you is a worse version of the organ you already own. There's a full year of research and testing behind this. The protocols, the products, the whole thing. Here's what actually moves the needle and what's just expensive placebo. Quick disclaimer before we go any further. I'm not a doctor. I'm a guy who spent a long time testing this on myself and reading what actual hepatologists publish. None of this is medical advice, so talk to your own doctor before you change anything. Most people picture the liver like a sponge that soaks up junk and slowly gets clogged. That mental model is intuitive, and it is completely wrong. The liver is not a filter that traps things. It's a chemical processing plant. Blood comes in carrying everything you ate, drank, breathed, and absorbed, and the liver takes those molecules and rebuilds them into something your body can either use or get rid of. That conversion happens in 2 phases, and this is the part nobody on TikTok bothers to explain. In phase 1, enzymes called cytochrome P450 grab a toxin and crack it open, which actually makes it more reactive for a moment. In phase 2, the liver attaches a little tag to that reactive piece, usually using compounds like glutathione or sulfate, and that tag tells your body to ship the molecule out through bile or urine. So when somebody says a product removes toxins, ask them which phase it's supposed to support and watch the silence happen. Your liver is already doing this 24 hours a day. It does not stop, it does not clog, and it does not need a tea to remind it. The real question isn't how to clean your liver. The real question is how to stop making its job harder, and how to give it the raw materials it actually uses. There are 3 blood markers that tell you most of what you need to know about your liver, and you can get all 3 on a basic panel for under $50. The first is ALT, alanine aminotransferase. It's an enzyme that lives inside liver cells. So when liver cells get stressed or damaged, ALT leaks out into the blood. A rising ALT usually points to fatty liver, alcohol, or certain medications. The second is AST, which is similar to ALT, but it also lives in muscle. So if you crush the workout the day before your blood draw, your AST can look elevated for reasons that have nothing to do with your liver. That's an easy one to get caught out by. The third one is GGT, gamma-glutamyl-transferase, and this one is the most underrated marker on the panel. GGT goes up with alcohol intake, with oxidative stress, and with bile flow problems. If your ALT looks fine, but your GGT is creeping up, you probably already know which weekend habit is the reason. The numbers I throw out in this section are illustrative. They're pulled from my own panels and from published studies. Your numbers will be your numbers. Take a common profile, an ALT around 38, an AST around 32, and a GGT around 41. None of those are alarming on paper, but the GGT is the one that should bother you because it's the kind of number you see in someone drinking 4 or 5 times a month and taking a pre-workout with a long ingredient list. That's exactly the profile where small changes move the panel. So let's go through what actually moves those numbers and what doesn't. All right, this is the tier that actually moves the markers. And it's the one nobody wants to make a video about because there's nothing to sell you. Cut the alcohol, or at least cut it in half. I know, groundbreaking. But this is the single biggest lever for most men in their late 20s and 30s, and the data on this is not subtle. Even moderate drinking, defined as 1 or 2 drinks a day, raises GGT and pushes fat into liver cells over time. Going from roughly 6 drinks a week down to 2 can drop GGT hard. In a profile like the one above, that's a fall from around 41 to the mid-20s in about 8 weeks. That's usually the single biggest change on the whole panel, and it costs nothing. It actually saves money. Lose visceral fat. Especially around the middle, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is now the most common chronic liver condition in the developed world, and the driver is not toxins. The driver is excess fructose and excess calories piling up as fat inside the liver itself. The studies on this are remarkably consistent. Losing about 5% of your body weight measurably reduces liver fat, and losing 7% can fully resolve early-stage fatty liver. You don't need a fancy diet for this. You need to cut liquid sugar first because juice, soda, and sweetened coffee drinks deliver fructose in a form your liver can't pace. Whole fruit is fine because the fiber slows the absorption and your gut handles a few grams of fructose without a problem. Zone 2 cardio, 3 to 4 hours a week. This is the one that sounds too simple to take seriously, which is exactly why it gets dismissed. Zone 2 is the pace where you can still hold a conversation, but you'd rather not. You're breathing harder, you're slightly uncomfortable, and you can sustain it for an hour. What Zone 2 does is improve mitochondrial function in your muscles, which means your body gets better at using fat for fuel instead of storing it. Better fat handling means less fat sitting in your liver. Add 3 Zone 2 sessions a week on a stationary bike, and combined with cutting alcohol, ALT can drop from the high 30s into the high 20s in about 10 weeks. Sleep. Because your liver runs on a clock. Your liver has its own circadian rhythm, and the enzymes that handle detoxification follow it. When you sleep badly, those enzymes get out of sync, insulin sensitivity drops the next day, and you store more fat. Nobody's pretending perfect sleep is realistic, but pushing an average from 6.5 hours to 7.5 makes a noticeable dent in morning glucose and indirectly helps the liver work. If you only do the 4 things in this tier, you will outperform 90% of the people buying expensive liver supplements. Level 2. This is the tier where the science is interesting but not bulletproof, and where a couple of these are genuinely worth using. Treat this section as worth considering. Not everyone should take this. TUDCA is a bile acid that your body already makes in tiny amounts, and it's been studied mostly for bile flow and cholestatic conditions. The early data on liver protection looks promising, and anecdotally, a lot of people in the longevity space use it during periods of higher alcohol intake or harsh supplement stacks. A typical approach is 500 milligrams a few times a week, mostly around days with a couple of drinks. This isn't a push to take it, just where it sits in the conversation, and you should talk to your own doctor before you add anything that affects biochemistry. Milk thistle, also known as silymarin, this is the granddaddy of liver supplements, and the data is genuinely mixed. Some trials show modest improvement in ALT in people with fatty liver. Other trials show basically nothing. It's cheap, it's well tolerated, and the downside is small. In 8-week tests with silymarin alone and nothing else changed, ALT tends to move by maybe a couple of points. That's within noise. So it's best treated as a low-cost add-on, not as a centerpiece. Omega-3. Specifically EPA and DHA from fish oil. The evidence here is actually better than people give it credit for. Multiple meta-analyses show that 2 to 4 grams a day of combined EPA and DHA reduces liver fat in people with fatty liver, and it nudges ALT down in the process. A common dose is 3 grams a day. The trick is buying a brand that publishes third-party oxidation testing, because rancid fish oil is genuinely worse than no fish oil. Choline from food. Choline is one of the more interesting underrated nutrients because your liver literally cannot package fat for export without it. If you're chronically low on choline, fat backs up in liver cells. Most people get plenty from eggs, but if you avoid eggs and organ meat, you may be running low without realizing it. Choline doesn't have to come from a capsule. 3 eggs most mornings gets you into a safe range. Food first, capsule second, every single time. Now the fun part. Level 3. These are the ones that turn out, on closer look, to be mostly attacks on people who want to feel like they're doing something. Detox teas. As I said earlier, the active ingredient is usually senna, which is a laxative. You're not removing toxins, you're removing water and stool. Skip them. The olive oil and grapefruit liver flush. This one is not just useless, it has real downsides. Drinking a cup of olive oil on an empty stomach can trigger a gallbladder contraction, and if you actually have a real gallstone, you can wedge it into a bile duct. That's an emergency room visit. There's no upside, and there is a measurable downside. Please don't do this one. 3-day juice cleanses. You are drinking fructose for 3 days with no protein and no fiber. For someone with early fatty liver, this is the opposite of helpful. Follow-up panels in that scenario tend to show GGT tick up, not down, and people feel worse, not better. Activated charcoal for the liver. Activated charcoal binds things in your gut, including medications you might be taking, and it does not reach your liver in any meaningful way. It has a legitimate use in emergency rooms for certain poisonings. It does not belong in your morning smoothie. Liver complex blends with 20 ingredients. When a label lists 20 herbs at proprietary blend doses, you are paying for marketing. Each ingredient is almost certainly underdosed, and you have no way to know what's actually in there. If you want milk thistle, buy milk thistle. Skip the kitchen sink blends. Here is what a clean week looks like. Stripped down. Drinking lands at 2 days a month at most, and when it happens, 2 glasses of wine. 3 zone 2 sessions a week at around 45 minutes each. Lifting 3 times a week on the other days. Sleep around 7.5 hours, with the last meal at least 3 hours before bed, because eating late tends to mess with morning glucose. For food, liquid sugar stays near 0. No juice, no soda, no sweetened coffee drinks. Whole fruit is fine, and plenty of it. 3 to 4 eggs most mornings for the choline, with 30 to 40 grams of protein at breakfast. For supplements, I take 3 grams of EPA and DHA every day, 500 milligrams of TUDCA 2 or 3 times a week, and a basic silymarin capsule most days because it's cheap and the downside is tiny. That's the whole stack. There's no expensive blend, no monthly subscription, and no 3-day reset. One more reminder on the fish oil. If you're on any blood thinner, clear the dose with your doctor first. Over about 4 months on an approach like this, ALT can go from the high 30s to the mid-20s, AST from the low 30s to the mid-20s, and GGT from the low 40s down to around 20. That last number is the one that matters most, and it comes almost entirely from cutting alcohol. Your liver doesn't need to be cleaned. It needs you to stop making its job harder. Cut the obvious stuff first. Track what actually changes. And always check with your doctor before changing anything in your stack. Subscribe and see you in the next one.